Hey everybody, welcome back to the couch. I'm Melissa and this is Couch Mom Club. In today's video, we're going to talk about something called restraint collapse. I think that this is one of the most interesting things that I have ever discovered. And I've discovered it in my child before I knew it was a thing, and I want to share it with you. If you don't know what it is, restraint collapse is a common phenomenon where a toddler will exhibit challenging behavior after being restrained or controlled for a period of time. For example, if your children are at daycare all day or in their early years at school, you might notice behavior once you pick them up. This is just amazing to me because I never actually thought about it until it was happening to me. And then when it was happening to me, I was like, what is going on? I really thought I was the only one until I started to do some research and I realized that this is actually a thing. Consider your children have been listening to authority all day. They've been following the rules. They've been on their best behavior. They've been doing everything that they've been told, and then you pick them up and you're on your way either in the cubby room. Sometimes it starts right in the cubby room, or you're on your way home, or you get home and your kid is exhibiting the most challenging behavior that you have ever witnessed. This is restraint collapse. This is where you see all the feelings, you see all the emotions, the big, heavy emotions, and a breakdown in what you are normally used to. You're normally used to a kid that is well behaved, a kid that listens well, a kid that, is all around just a well behaved child. And all of a sudden, you're seeing these wild expressions of very big emotions. They all come flooding out. They all hit you like a ton of bricks. And you're kind of left there thinking, what in the world is going on and what should I do? In this video, I'm going to kind of discuss what restraint collapse is. I'm going to detail a little bit of what to expect. And I'm going to talk to you about what you can do about it. Because if you are like me, you are probably sitting there wondering, what in the world should I be doing about this? And if you are feeling alone, I'm going to let you know that you're not alone. It happens to most of us and it happened to me. So that's why I am going to give you the information to help you to navigate through restraint collapse and help you to overcome it and get to the other side. So have you ever noticed that when you pick up your child, it might be a very difficult situation when you're trying to get them together, put their jackets on, get them out of the door? I find that, when my son started school, his early years in JK, he was exhibiting a lot of this challenging behavior, so to speak. And now that my girls are in daycare, I see it as well. It starts for me like right in the cubby room. Either they'll be very happy to see me and they'll be jumping and they'll be distracted, or they will literally just combust and burst into tears. I've been in the cubby room fumbling over jackets. It takes me forever and a day to put jackets on, to get them out of the door, to get them into the car. It's challenging because one, they haven't seen me all day and they want to tell me all the things that they've done, and two, they are experiencing a literal collapse. After having listened to the teachers and the counselors and everybody that they're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, after that long period of time of being in daycare, they want to just kind of melt and kind of let go a little bit. And being their mom or their dad, you are often their child's safe space where they can display their most true selves without the restraint. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing in the cubby room. And it was really challenging because, of course, I want to get to the next thing. I want to get them into the car. I want to go and prepare dinner. I want to do all of these things. But here they are having a meltdown or being very rambunctious, and I am finding it difficult to control them. If you've ever been in this situation, then you are probably experiencing restraint collapse. So restraint collapse is a behavioral response to prolonged control. It is where your kids are displaying their truest selves after being restricted. Sometimes this manifests in tantrums, sometimes it manifests in meltdowns or aggressive behavior. It could be that your kids are over hyper and they're just jumping on the walls and you can't get them to settle down. Sometimes it's tears, and the tears, both theirs and mine. And these are just ways that you can kind of identify that your child might be experiencing restraint collapse. When restraint collapse happens, your toddler is often working through their feelings, their frustrations, their loss of control, and it highlights the stress levels that they might be, experiencing. And a lot of times as parents, we don't consider children to have stress because like, what kind of stress could they possibly have? They're not paying bills. They don't have the same stress factors as we do as adults, but they do experience some levels of stress. Going to school and daycare or any kind of facility is quite outside of their norm. Even though it becomes habit, it becomes routine for them, what they are normally and most naturally able to do as kids is just to be. When they're in school, they're being put in restraint. There are rules that they have to follow. There are, regulations. There are different adults that they have to listen to and have to, take guidance from. And this can be a restraint for them, which can cause certain levels of stress. When they're at school listening to their teachers, they understand at a very early age that they almost have to put on or perform for these other adults. But when they're in the care of mom or dad, they feel completely relaxed, they feel completely free, and they are just able to be themselves. If we as parents are not recognizing and addressing restraint collapse early on, we're gonna have a hard time to prevent the long-term consequences, which can be displayed if we're not challenging our toddlers in this stage, and if we're not, being proactive and seeing restraint collapse for what it is and doing what is necessary to kind of tailor the behavior that we're seeing. I remember when I first started seeing restraint collapse in my eldest child, and of course at the time I didn't have language for it. I didn't know that it was an actual thing, but I noticed that whenever I'd pick him up, he would have really high energy and then very easily fall into behavior that I didn't enjoy seeing. He would be extremely difficult to, get to listen and to participate and to, really take instruction. And then a lot of times after my very numerous failed attempts to try to regulate his behavior and regulate his emotions, he would have an epic meltdown. When I say epic meltdown, I mean, it was enough to have me cry sometimes. Sometimes I would be sitting there like, oh my goodness, like I don't know what to do. And, he would sometimes hyperventilate and it would take a long time for him to, settle down. And I must admit, there were times when I lost my cool. There were times when I completely just didn't know what to do. I would raise my voice. I would, resort to immediate discipline. I wouldn't even have the opportunity to see it for what it was. I was just so upset and so frustrated by what I was seeing that my immediate response would be like, okay, well, you're not going to play with your Legos when you get home, or, they try to do something that I thought would punish the behavior. But I learned very quickly that that wasn't the way to go. And because I was so confused as to why my child was, behaving this way, I didn't know how to act until I started to really take into consideration that something was happening. Of course, I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it was something. So I started to do some research. I started to talk to his teachers and talk to, his pediatrician. And I learned what it was that I was dealing with, which is restraint collapse. And then, of course, after learned strategies on how to cope with it. So you might find some of the strategies that I used very useful for you. And I think that, that helped me, especially with the girls after I seen it in them. Instead of resorting to punishment or, getting upset myself, I was able to navigate through it in a more healthy way. So first, I want to encourage you parents to set realistic expectations for you and for your child. You know the circumstances that you are in when you're picking up your child. You know what you have to do. But if you know that, for example, putting a coat on is going to cause an issue, maybe bring a blanket. If it's cold, wrap your child in a blanket, then bring them to the car. Of course, if it's a very cold day and you need a heavy jacket, your child can't sit in a car seat with the heavy jacket anyways. So bring a warm blanket. That might help to prevent a lot of the meltdowns and a lot of the struggle that you might face with putting on a jacket. This is just my way of saying, with a small example, that have ideas on how to do things another way. Sometimes we become so routine-based that we forget that there's alternate ways of doing the same thing. We don't have to do it the same way each and every time. We could be creative. We could think of other ways to get a job done.
Ready? One. Oh, good job.
We don't have to beat ourselves into following the exact same way of doing things over and over again, especially when we're realizing that it's not working or it's causing other issues. You can find creative ways of doing the same thing if you just put a little thought and intentionality behind it. So it's also a good idea to have conversations, and I mean regular conversations with their teachers and caregivers. You know, it's a great way to kind of see how your child behaves and operates during school and during daycare, and kind of help you to kind of piece things together if you're noticing different behavior when they're coming home. So for me, I thought if he's creating this kind of tense environment with me after school, it must be what he's doing at school, and I didn't want that. I didn't want my child to cause the teachers the same distress that they were causing me. So of course I asked the questions. I was like, does he do this during the school day? And you know, when the teachers were like, no, he's actually very good at school. He listens very well. He participates. I was like, that's what I'm used to, but that's not what's happening at home. So I was a little bit confused. And of course, that's what was one of the things that triggered me to really look into what was happening. And then after I kind of established his regular behaviors during school, I was able to shift my conversations with the teachers to what does he like during school? What were some of his highlight moments? What was some of the things that he participated in? Can you tell me a time when he was really happy or really excited? This is a great strategy because it helps you to get talking points for when you're engaging your toddler after school. As soon as you see, some challenging behavior in your child, you are able to, redirect them. Your child starts acting up and you ask, hey, I heard that you built a house out of Legos today, or I heard that you made Play-Doh people, or whatever the case is. Tell me about it. And get really excited. I found that this worked for me because one, my child kind of thought I was magical. He was like, how did you know? You weren't even at my school, but you knew that I did these things. And my kid loved to tell me about his day. He loved to go into detail about the things that he did. And this helped him to kind of distract from his regular meltdowns and outbursts and give him something to talk about. And of course, it gave you something to talk about. So now you're engaging in conversation, and it's at a pace that your child is comfortable with, and it helps you to have a mature conversation with your little child. So after school, you want to make sure that you're maintaining consistent routine. Although this means, a little bit more structure, it also helps you to kind of understand your child's flow and helps you to predict what will happen next. I would suggest that even within the routine, you factor in some sit down time. Don't just move from school to another activity at home. Have time with your child to sit down and breathe a little bit. When you think about restraint collapse, you're thinking about being restrained for a couple of hours a day. So you want to kind of factor in a time where your child can be unrestrained, where they can just let loose, where they can just be themselves. If this means sitting in the car for a couple of minutes, or sitting on the couch for a few minutes when you get home, factor in that time. Allow it to become routine for you, that we're not just gonna go and start making dinner. We're not just gonna push our kids into the next activity. We're gonna give them the time that they need to unwind. I mean, it's the same for us. When we as adults, when we come into the house, I know for me, I take my bra off right away, like immediately. Or you put your slippers on, or you sit down and you scroll through your phone for a little bit. These are ways that you've learned to unwind and to better handle your collapse, so to speak. It's not an outburst because we're adults and we know how to, hopefully, hopefully we know how to unwind in a healthy way. We want to demonstrate that to our children, and we want to create environments where they can unwind in a healthy way. So after your downtime, you want to have a plan. Don't just wing it because I think that when you wing it, that's when you leave room for things to go catastrophically wrong. So have a plan. Whether it is providing a snack or, doing something quiet like a coloring book or a puzzle, have a plan and give your child choices. Don't just say, hey, you're going to sit down, eat these carrots, and color in this book. Give your child the option. Hey, what do you want for a snack? Even with the activity, give them a choice. That way they feel more in control. They understand that you are respecting their boundaries, you're respecting their choices, and you're providing a way for them to still be engaged in such a way where it matters to them. It's not just you telling them what to do and, providing more restraint, but you're giving them a comfortable and a calm environment where they can choose. We're going to see things like restraint collapse. We're going to see meltdowns. We're going to see behavior that we don't necessarily like. But it is definitely our opportunity to display some patience with our kids. Remember that we have to be patient with them. They are learning and doing things for the very first time. As much as it's your first time parenting in a lot of ways, it's their first time doing and being and learning and growing. So we have to develop patience and understanding when dealing with our children. Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced restraint collapse. I know that when it was my first time seeing these behaviors, I didn't know what to do. So I hope that this video is helpful for you if you are experiencing restraint collapse. And I do want to hear about the different strategies that you use to cope with it. Of course, if you are going to use screen time during your downtime, here's a really cool video that you should check out on how to introduce screens to your children and how to do it in a healthy way. And of course, I am looking for suggestions. What should I cover in the next video? Write them all in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.